Behaviour is what we do. It involves movement through time and space. So, you know, waving, this kind of thing, wave for the camera. That's behaviour. Behaviour has an effect on the environment, and the environment selects behaviour. Now, this might be conceptually a bit weird, what I'm about to say, and don't worry if you don't get it the first time round, because it takes most people quite a bit of time, including me, you know, quite a bit of time to get your head around this idea. But if you think about the Darwinian model of natural selection, some species survive because they have certain characteristics within the context of a physical environment. Think of that as a metaphor, and think about the environment as the social fabric, if you like, that surrounds an individual, everything outside of the person's skin that we can all see, and anything inside the person's skin that we can't see. But only I can see mine, you can see yours, but we can't see one another's internal world. But it's still relevant. And then think about a two-way relationship. So every instance of behaviour causes a change in the social environment, but the social environment in return selects this behaviour rather than that one, this behaviour rather than that one. And the framework for understanding this is captured in this idea of a contingency. And a contingency really is an if-then relation. It's kind of a dependent. If this, then that. And so the effect we can conceptualize as challenging behaviour impacts a deficient environment and makes it responsive. So if you can't hear me saying, hello, spend time with me, what you might hear me say is la, 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 la. And you might not hear that in a very positive context. You might say, oh, Sandy, please stop hitting yourself. But still, that's functionally kind of equivalent. So challenging behaviour causes, potentially, an unresponsive environment to respond. At the same time, the fact that you don't notice my verbal behaviour, but you do notice my self-injurious behaviour, that means the deficient environment is responding differentially, is favouring self-injury over verbal response forms. That kind of makes sense this way and that way. Right, now to the meat and potatoes, as they say. The 4 terms of a contingency, of a behavioural contingency. First is behaviour, so there has to be some behaviour involved in the analysis. We have to be able to describe that and know when it's occurring, when it's not occurring. That's the first thing. The second thing is, once we know what the behaviour is, we can apply this principle that behaviour is maintained or not by events that follow it, consequences. And there are a number of subcategories, which I'm not going to go into at the moment, but we'll just go with the idea that behaviour occurs, something happens, and that something is going to make it more or less likely that behaviour will be repeated again in the future. Either it will or it won't. And this could be challenging behaviour, or it could be any other behaviour. Behaviour, consequences. Now, the value of the consequence is not, generally speaking, consistent. It varies from moment to moment, and the momentary effects are defined by what we call here the motivative or the motivational context. So this is a bit of a weird one, but what it means is anything that occurs in the environment or in the person's experience of the environment that has the effect of altering the value of something and evokes a response to things of a behaviour and value altering impact is described in this framework as motivative. Now, I'll make it a little bit clearer by thinking about chocolate. So we do a straw poll. Who loves chocolate? Raise your hand. That's most, but not everyone. So maybe 60%. So first thing to say about chocolate is, for some people, it will have a property that will have an impact on behaviour, probably, but not always. Why not always? Because when you've just eaten chocolate, the last thing in the world you want is chocolate, isn't it? So if you're chocolate deprived, chocolate has value and it's going to evoke behaviour. It might even cause you to get out of a chair, get in a car, drive into town, find a supermarket and go purchase chocolate and then eat it. Ah, yum. And when you've eaten it, You go from being chocolate deprived to being sated. And when you're sated, chocolate has no value. It will not evoke behaviour. So, that means in order to get a proper understanding of challenging behaviour and other behaviour, we have to have some insight into what is the motivative or motivational context. We agree? Excellent. And I love the nodding. This is feedback. We're interacting. We're all engaged.
I'm stealing my presentation.
I'm stealing Julie's presentation. So the last component then is what we call a discriminative component. And that is, you know, as we get into town, we're going to make discriminations about where the reward for this behaviour is likely to sit. So if we go into supermarkets, we know we get chocolate. We're not going to go into a bike shop because the probability of getting chocolate in a cycle shop is pretty low. And we'll know that because we have a learning history. So this learning history will say when we enter a supermarket, the probability of getting chocolate is quite high. The probability of getting chocolate when you go into a cycle shop is quite low. And that's a discrimination. Forget the stuff about rules and verbals because that just muddies the water. Now, subtypes of contingency. Escape or avoid aversive stuff. So this is a situation where you might find yourself in when you have something to do which is really hard or really unpleasant or just something that you don't like to do. And what that does really is evoke behaviour that is likely to contact an escape contingency. What gets us out of this difficult situation? And what might get us out is saying, I don't want to do this right now, or it might get us out by doing something else instead of the thing that is. Anybody, you all kind of done assignments and things like that in the course of your learning. Remember when you were doing assignments? You remember having that experience where you sit down to do your assignment and then you think, God, this kitchen floor really does need a wash. More than anything. So you go, yeah, you know the sort of thing. So that's the effect. But the selection then is that the environment kind of differentially reinforces behaviour that has that impact, that contacts that contingency. And the second one is social attention or access to tangibles, another category. And there, that's a bit like the chocolate example. That's the deprivation. And you go from deprivation to association. So you're missing something, and the behaviour puts you in contact with the thing that you're missing. Compare and contrast with the first example, which is something is present, which is not feeling good at the moment, and that evokes behaviour that will get rid of it. It terminates it, takes it away. And then the third category is the sensory stimulation. And we think that those same processes are likely to apply, but they apply in a way that is not directly observable or necessarily directly susceptible to environmental manipulation. Although, if I have time to show the slide, you will see that context is critical. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. These are lawful relationships that have been demonstrated hundreds of thousands of times, but they apply not only to challenging behaviour of our clients, they apply to all behaviour that the client could do at any given moment in time, and they apply to us too. We are part of this behavioural system. When we're interacting with people, we are in it. And you have to be in it to win it. We're taught generally that this ABC behaviour is a very simple model. Antecedent, behaviour, consequence. Very straightforward, very linear. Turns out it's not quite that straightforward. It's much more complex. And this little diagram is just meant to explain how a behavioural system might work. So over the left-hand side there, we have a learning history. And the learning history is every contingency that we've ever been exposed to, ever in our life. And it's all kind of in a bag. And because time's arrow goes in one direction, we can't go back. You can't take it. You can't unlearn something. You can't take an experience out of the bag. So really, when we're in the process of behavioural change, we have to think about learning history and how long is it going to take for that learning history to be redefined, reshaped, to evoke new behavioural forms, new response forms. So we have to take that into account. Then we take into account the immediate motivative context and the availability of that consequence. So that's our motivation and our discrimination. And then there's an instance of behaviour and a consequence. And in a traditional analysis, this would be the A, these two, A, the B, and the C. But because we're part of the system, we have to think about the yellow bits as well, the carer. And there's a motivative context for the carer. And there will be some information in the environment about the availability, and that will evoke behaviour. And if we follow the loop around this way, then we see that behaviour and the motivative context might actually be one and the same thing. And it goes even better than that, because the behaviour that occurs next is actually probably what keeps the first behaviour going, the challenge behaviour in this context. So let's just put that into some context. If we have a learning history that says, hidden in your head gets your attention. That's what I've learned. That's what's in my bag, if you like, because the environment responds differentially this way. If I'm in a no attention condition and a person is present, then that's going to evoke head hitting, because that's my learning history. But as a carer, I think, oh, Sandy, don't hit your head. That's awful. So that evokes a response, which is saying no, because that's in the carer learning history, and saying no delivers attention. It's a bit like the chocolate then. Once you've had the chocolate, you don't need it anymore, so the SIB stops. And in the short term, that episode is resolved, but in the long term, this system is what maintains the challenging behaviour. We can do a similar one for task, except that in the first instance, it's an aversive task demand. The teacher says, do this work, and head hitting in this context avoids demands. So you hit the head, and the teacher says, okay, do it later. So they remove the demand goes away, the SIB stops, and this reinforcement is the strengthening. The strengthening is a bit like reinforced concrete. Concrete's stronger than ordinary concrete. And so when it does, it feeds back into the learning history. And there we have a complete behavioural system. We can understand and describe the contingencies that maintain challenging behaviour, but also that maintain the behaviour of other people, that deliver the reinforcement that maintains the challenging behaviour, and how the removal of challenging behaviour in the short term can sustain that delivery. And using that, we can draw these diagrams that give a real insight. Don't worry, I'm not asking you. No questions on this. Don't worry. Now, how does this connect with active support? Well, I think in the following way. Active support environments are characterised by support and assistance, not demand and control. So support and assistance replace demand and control. The active support environments provide, they drench the person and the environment in opportunity for social interaction. And because it's so drenched, there's almost a natural ratio. You're 10 times more likely to be engaged socially when you're not presenting challenging behaviour than if you were presenting challenging behaviour. So at least there's a ratio if there's not a complete management of that. So contact replaces challenging behaviour. In the absence of challenging behaviour, replace the experience of feeling lonely and socially isolated, having no one to talk to in the environment. And then access to activity and activity materials replace the experience of being bored and understimulated. So when we match those contexts, then we can see that the escape or avoiding of the aversive task or social demand is neutralised by the provision of support and assistance in place of demand and control. It just takes it away. And if that's the motivative context for challenging behaviour, you can see how potentially a person will not experience demand and control as often, therefore will not be motivated to escape, therefore challenging behaviour that is escape maintained becomes irrelevant. The contingency is irrelevant, therefore the behaviour is irrelevant. And the same thing applies with the absence of social attention or tangibles, a bit like the chocolate example. If we provide plenty of opportunity for people to interact with other people and to have free access to activity materials and foods and drinks and what have you, then that state of deprivation is going to be present less often, and behaviour that's motivated that way will occur less often as well. So active support in this context might be thought of as state-of-the-art prevention. We create the conditions in the natural environment that render challenging behaviour ineffective, inefficient and irrelevant. And as well, it's even better than that, because this third thing is that when we do this well, it becomes self-sustaining. That we create a virtuous circle of development and growth and opportunity that sustains itself. How? Well, we did the ABC of behaviour, and what we do in an active support environment is we influence the antecedent contexts. We also are able to teach or support replacement behaviour, and replacement behaviour is functionally equivalent, alternate, same function, but also it's what else a person could do instead. It's everything else. The universe of possibilities is immense. And so we have the antecedent context, we have behaviour, and then we're working with consequences as well to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of those other behaviours, those other alternate behaviours. Not just in the context of challenging behaviour, but in context of a broad quality of life. So, let me just share very quickly Tom's story. So Tom was 32 years old when this story began, and he was a person with severe learning disability and autism. When we met him for the first time, he was in a very poor physical state, and he'd been referred to an assessment treatment unit way back in time, and the main problem was this increase in self-injurious behaviour. And so the thinking was, we need to increase medication. We need more medication to control the self-injurious behaviour. But unfortunately, that led to more SIB. Well, it didn't lead to more SIB, but more SIB occurred. And so the response was to increase the medication again. And that went round again, more SIBs, and increased medication. So he was trapped in this cycle where the conceptualisation was that the medication was going to fix the self-injurious behaviour. The formulation that we came up with actually is that was probably contributing. Wasn't the sole contributing factor, but if you can imagine being heavily medicated and feeling ill as a consequence, then that threshold for demand and the need for comfort from other people was exaggerated. So there's a kind of an example of, if you like, the biology of the person and the social context interacting in a dynamic way. So the presentation was self-injury, head-hitting, physical aggression, damage to property, negative vocalization. We did a frequency count over 9 days, and it averaged 200 a day, instances a day. And I'll just say something about grouping behaviour together in terms of categories according to how it looks or what its impact is. And grouping behaviour functionally is sometimes different. And it turned out that skin picking was not related directly to head hitting and head banging, which was more closely related to physical aggression functionally. And all that means is you have to do different things to help, as it were, resolve those different aspects of the presentation. There will be a test on this one, so you better study it. I hope you brought your reading glasses. But this is in really just to say the analysis was in terms of learning history for staff and the impact of the medication here, then the social context here, the immediate antecedent context, how that evoked behaviour and what the impact was, if you like, on the environment. So this notion that the environment selects and that the behaviour has an impact on the environment is captured in this diagram. And what is also captured here is the state of equilibrium. So the kind of low demand, continuous social attention actually created conditions under which skin picking occurred, which is kind of more sensory motivated. This is a diagram which describes how you would want the environment to be. So this is the aim, what you're working towards in the future. And these are some of the aspects of the intervention. So I'll quickly go through them. First of all, withdrawal of medication. So this involved collaborating with a psychiatrist on managing down the complex regime of medication to complete withdrawal. and that was conceptualized as a PBS kind of intervention. Functional communication training, so teaching how to ask and how to terminate. Conceptualized as positive behaviour support. Skills teaching across the piece, embedded into active support and creating opportunity for those behaviours to occur. Direct behavioural intervention, so there's some kind of DRO, there's a very sophisticated masking and fading procedure for skin picking, and those were very clearly discrete components of behavioural intervention, conceptualised as PBS. Enrichment in home and community life, which included how he spent his time at home and in community and reinstating damaged relationships and so forth. Conceptualised is active support. Developing personal routines which were critical for this individual. Critical to have personal routines that were his rather than that varied according to which member of staff happened to be present at that moment in time. Active support. Developing a hobby. This guy came very, very skilled at rug making, basically, and that was occupational, that was active support, and again, the kind of relationship stuff. So these are an integrated system of support based on a functional assessment. I'll go very quickly now. So activity data, consequence of active support. This is just a snapshot. Again, community involvement, monitoring what was happening moment to moment. There's some missing data in this slide, but basically we're looking at how often and for how long. And now to the outcomes. So what stand out about this is that aggression, self-injury, damage and vocalization all reduced from quite high levels to 0, but it takes 2 years fully to accomplish that. And it takes 2 years of focused support by highly trained, highly skilled individuals. This model involved behaviour specialists leading, then behaviour specialists supporting, and then an integration into mainstream service provision. And the second half, this one here, this part of the graph here, shows a follow-up fully 11 years later in mainstream services, still at 0 rate, as a consequence of sustaining active support in the mainstream service. Not perfectly, not perfectly, but good enough to maintain 0 levels. So, the personal routines were still there, they were still embedded. The hobby was still there, still embedded. The community involvement still there, still embedded, enough to sustain it over that period of time. So I'm going to stop now because I'm in danger of encroaching on Julie's time.